Welcome to another episode of Joe and the Fat Man. Joe Smeltzer of Nittany Sports Now will be joined, as always, by Kyle Fatman Golick, also of Nittany Sports Now. And also joining us will be Jay Howhan of Mike Farrell Sports, who also doubles as our producer behind the scenes. Big Ten Media Days are coming up, and we'll be talking about that along with Penn State women's volleyball coach Katie Schumacher Colley's ESPN ESPYs acceptance speech, and finally, the celebrated Box and Mystery segment, which Fat Man will spearhead. Fellas, welcome to another show. We're going to get this started by talking about Big Ten Media Days. The annual summer event is going to have a bit of a different look this year in terms of geography. For a long time, the event was held in Chicago. In more recent years, it had been in Indianapolis. Now it's out of the Midwest and into Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. Surely this is a sign of the times, as this would have never happened before USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington joined the Big Ten. It's going to look different geographically, yes, which is why NSN won't be covering it in person, unfortunately. But as far as the layout of Big Ten Media Days, things are going to look pretty similar, really, to what they've been. It's going to run Tuesday, July 22nd through Thursday, July 24th. This is being recorded Thursday, July 17th for context. But as far as Penn State goes, they'll be in the middle on Wednesday. James Franklin will talk along with Drew Aller, Nick Dawkins, and Zaki Wheatley. Franklin, of course, is the head coach. Aller, of course, is the quarterback. Dawkins, the starting center, is one of Penn State's emotional leaders. And Wheatley, a safety, is one of the stars of the defense. So it's hard to preview too much of Big Ten Media Days because there isn't much to say about press conferences before they happen. But if you were covering them in person, what would you ask James Franklin? Fat Man, we'll start with you.
Oh, I mean, after last year, Joe, after I rattled Franklin, what would I do to get him going this year? I I would probably ask James this year more about the progression of Drew because if you recall at last year's media days, Drew was all about it was, he was saying that he had a quarterback, and there's obviously Drew could have gone in the draft this year and gone in the top 10 easily in the 2025 NFL draft, but he came back for another year. So it would be more on the lines of I'd ask James a two-parter. I would ask him about what does he feel Drew still needs to work on overall, because in that setting, he kind of has to answer the question. And then secondly, I would ask about how Drew's, how Drew, kind of evolved, like has evolved mentally, post the Orange Bowl, because that's about as traumatic of a loss and a way to lose a game as I've ever seen. I mean, this is Bill Buckner territory. This is all the above. So that's where I would be at from a coaching perspective, asking him about his quarterback.
Um, I think I would go with the landscape in the Big Ten obviously changing, especially because of last year. What he made of having to travel with the schedule going out west to USC, and what he thinks of this upcoming schedule with um, going out west once again and playing now UCLA. I think that would be interesting to kind of hear James's comments on that.
Yeah, I think those are both good. I think I would ask him something. I think the summer is a good time to ask like a big picture related question, and I think a big summer topic is, well, I mean, NIL is relevant throughout all 12 months of the year, but I think especially in the off season, that's a time where you'll ask about NIL, and James Franklin not only would answer the question, he'd be happy to answer it because it gives him a platform really to beat the drum and try to get something that he wants. And I think I would tailor my question this year to, okay, obviously, things have appeared to be been getting a lot better with NIL the past 2 years, right? You brought this great roster back. This isn't getting Jim Knowles wasn't NIL, but it is still a sign of Penn State being all in that alignment that James Franklin talks about all the time. But it's no secret that Penn State has lost out on a lot of big time recruits that it wanted. So with all that information, I would ask James basically, if he feels that Penn State is devoting enough to its high school recruiting in NIL, and
That's
if
a
they
fair
aren't,
question.
is it possible really for them to spend what teams like Oregon and Notre Dame are reportedly spending, while also keeping this great roster together and using other funds to build around the program with the coaching staff and things like that. So that's what I would ask. Basically, if James Franklin feels Penn State is doing enough on the high school recruiting end to really pony up and get some of the big time players that at once.
From a big picture perspective, Joe, if I was to have a question in that regard, would be, you know, piggybacking on what came out of Big 12 media days with Deion Sanders, and even Rich Rodriguez even was promoting it as a salary cap, because it really isn't fair. You know, this Penn State roster has to be near the top of compensated teams in college football. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
Oh yeah,
we could speculate the number right now. We don't have exact numbers, so I don't want to say that Penn State's at that amongst those 6 or 7 teams that guys like Kirk Signetti and from Indiana and Brett Bielema from Illinois suggested was north of 40 million. But you got to believe that it's up there. And I think a salary cap question is probably going to be one of the questions that comes up to James. It'd be one I would want to ask because, while we enjoy the advantage of Penn State being able to flex, unlike other teams, there's still that competitive imbalance that I don't like in the sport.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that the better the parity, the better the game of college football will do. And I think that if you are the commissioner of the NCAA or whatever have you, you should be looking to get this done as soon as possible. Or as we've spoken about on episodes in the past, you're going to start to see it just become the SEC and the Big Ten, which it already kind of is. But as we've discussed, those two conferences will just branch out and basically have their own form of the national championship and essentially form their own separate super league. Essentially,
And that's what's kind of looking like it's coming to, especially if
yeah.
you've heard Eli Drinkwitz from
yeah.
Missouri already breaking kind of party lines, siding with
Yeah.
the Big Ten format for the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think another good question, and I don't know what James would answer this, is because he's talked about wanting a commissioner for college football. He's even brought up names as to who he feels could be good commissioners of college football. Um, a good question to ask maybe would be, "Hey James, you're not going to coach forever. When you're out of coaching, is being on the administrative side of college football something you would be interested in?" That's a question he would never answer before like they're playing Oregon. But when there's still a month and a half before the season and James is more relaxed than he would be, right? He's going on vacation. He usually takes a vacation either right before or right after Big Ten Media Days. It's probably right before because camp is starting soon. But that might be something that you could get an answer from James at this specific time of year that he wouldn't be able to get really at any time else.
There's a lot of big picture stuff, especially with James, that you can get. Like, it's not you talk about his career goal, and he said it himself. He wants to be the first African American head coach to win a national championship. So it would be nice to maybe elaborate on it with him having the best chance to achieve that goal. How much does that play into this season? How much is that a motivator for himself, and then kind of trickling down through his assistants to the players?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as far as the players go, we've been talking about Franklin. Anything you would ask? Well, we'll go with Drew Aller. I don't know. He's obviously the main attraction here. So, is there anything you'd ask him specifically? Kyle, you kind of alluded to it with
I,
the Franklin question, but
well, I would ask Drew, and again, this would be a question that I know that I would be going right up against it with him. Is I would want to ask Drew, and again, this would be me. Is how did he mentally take care of himself after the Orange Bowl, and what
Great
advice would
question.
he give other players? Um, That to me is, I think, the big question to ask Drew there, and kind of how he's improved his mental game after that for sure.
I would it, I would have said the exact same question Kyle just brought up. So I'm going to go with how has he gotten on to a better page with his new receivers that have been thrown into the fold with Pena um, and
That's good
Ross.
too.
I think Pena 100% at where he is a little bit behind. Um, I would be curious to see how they've kind of thrown him in the fold, and also what the offense potentially will look like without Tyler Warren this year.
Yep.
And Joe, and I know we're looking to wrap the segment, but I would like to ask the guys here, what are the betting odds, since it's in Vegas, that Tony Petitti comes out to announce that the Big Ten championship eventually is going to be played in Vegas? What are your guys' thoughts on it? Because you don't just make that move out to the desert,
Yeah.
Big Ten Media Days, and not have an announcement with that.
I got like minus 120.
I think I'd probably go with the minus 140 because you know what I was thinking would be a pretty cool venue, but I know this would be probably saved, of course, would be the Rose Bowl. Maybe. I don't know. But that would be pretty neat as well to have as the Big Ten championship venue.
I'm going heavy odds, like minus 1,000. I think that's going to be one of the things Petiti leads off with after the playoff, and he's going to mention something about that. I'm 100% convinced of that.
All right. Well, that'll do it for segment one of Joe and the Fat Man. When we come back, we'll talk about the ESPYs and one of Penn State sports' most beloved figures being rightfully honored at them on Wednesday, July 16th.